The Whispering Abyss, a Nightmarish Voyage. The relentless waves clawed at the sides of our small fishing boat, casting eerie shadows across the moonlit water. My heart raced as I clung to the damp wooden railing, my knuckles white with fear. We were miles from land, a speck in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the open ocean. It was a night I would never forget. My name is Daniel, and I had grown up in a coastal town, spending most of my life on or near the sea. But this night was different. My friends and I, Jack and Sarah, had set out on a fishing trip like so many times before, but this trip would become a nightmarish tale we'd tell for the rest of our lives. The sea had been unpredictable all day, with dark clouds looming ominously overhead. We should have taken it as a warning, but our greed for a big catch blinded us to the impending danger. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we found ourselves surrounded by a thick, eerie fog that seemed to roll in from nowhere. Visibility was reduced to a few feet, and the once familiar coastline vanished. Jack, the most experienced among us, took the helm, squinting through the dense fog, trying to navigate our way back to safety. But the ocean was restless that night, and it played tricks on our senses. The boat rocked violently, and I stumbled, clutching the side for dear life. Sarah clung to the railing, her face pale with fear. Hours passed, and we remained lost in that disorienting fog. Panic began to creep into our voices as we called out to each other, trying to keep our bearings. The sea seemed alive, its depths echoing with eerie whispers that chilled my soul. I had never felt so isolated, so small and insignificant in the face of nature's fury. And then, the whispers grew louder, taking on a sinister tone. It was as if the very ocean itself was mocking us, taunting us with its power. I exchanged nervous glances with Jack and Sarah, but none of us dared to speak. The boat creaked and groaned, as if the very wood beneath our feet was protesting our intrusion into its domain. As the night wore on, the fog lifted slightly, revealing an unsettling sight. In the distance, we saw the outline of another boat, old and weathered, barely visible in the dim moonlight. It was a ghostly vessel, adrift in the middle of nowhere. Jack tried to steer our boat away from it, but it was as if an invisible force was pulling us closer. We were drawn inexorably toward the derelict ship, and as we approached, a feeling of dread settled over us. The other boat seemed abandoned, its deck empty and lifeless. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. With trembling hands, we tied our boat to the ghostly vessel and cautiously stepped aboard. The wooden planks creaked beneath our feet and a cold wind whistled through the rigging. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of our own shallow breathing. As we explored the abandoned ship, we discovered signs of a struggle. Broken equipment, torn nets, and scattered belongings hinted at a chaotic and desperate escape. It was as if the crew had vanished into thin air, leaving only the echoes of their final moments behind. We made our way to the captain's cabin, the sense of dread growing stronger with each step. The door creaked open, revealing a scene of unimaginable horror. The room was covered in seaweed, and a grotesque, slimy creature hung from the ceiling, its tentacles dripping with dark, viscous fluid. It was a nightmarish sight, like something out of a Lovecraftian horror story. We fled the cabin, retreating to our own boat in a panic. As we cast off from the ghostly ship, I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had followed us back. The whispers in the ocean grew louder, and the waves became more violent, as if the very sea itself was angry at our intrusion. With sheer desperation, Jack managed to navigate our way out of the fog and back towards the coastline. The moment we saw the familiar lights on the shore, relief washed over us. But the horrors of that night would haunt us forever. We never spoke of the abandoned ship to anyone, fearing that they would dismiss our story as the ravings of madmen. To this day, I can't go near the ocean without feeling a shiver down my spine, a lingering fear that the sea holds secrets darker and more terrifying than we can ever imagine. And I can't help but wonder if the whispers of the ocean were warning us, trying to keep us away from the horrors that lay hidden beneath the waves. Beneath the Abyss, the Nightmarish Encounter. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery path across the dark waters of the ocean. It was a night like any other, or so I thought as I stood at the helm of our small fishing boat, the siren's call. My name is Emily, and I had been fishing these waters with my crew for years. Little did I know that this night would be unlike any other, a night of terror that would change our lives forever. The sea had been unusually calm for the past few hours, and the rhythmic sound of the waves against the hull had lulled me into a false sense of security. My crewmates, Tom and Lisa, were below deck, taking a break after a long day of hauling in our catch. But as I scanned the horizon, something caught my eye, a strange disturbance in the water. It was as if the very ocean itself was trembling in fear. I called out to Tom and Lisa, and they rushed up to join me at the helm. We stared in disbelief at the churning water before us. Suddenly, the boat lurched violently, knocking us off balance. I clung to the railing as the siren's call was tossed about like a toy in the hands of a child. Panic seized us as we realized we were under attack. A monstrous dark shape emerged from the depths, rising ominously beneath our boat. It was unlike anything we had ever seen before, a grotesque hybrid of sea creature and nightmare. Enormous tentacles, lined with suckers the size of dinner plates, reached out of the water and wrapped themselves around our vessel. The siren's call groaned in protest as the creature's grip tightened. Fear and adrenaline coursed through my veins as I struggled to maintain control of the boat. Tom and Lisa clung to the railing, their faces pale with terror. The monstrous creature continued its relentless assault, its tentacles pulling and tearing at the wooden hull. It was as if the very ocean had birthed a monster determined to drag us into its depths. Desperation took hold, and I grabbed a flare gun from the nearby storage locker. With trembling hands, I fired it into the night sky, hoping that anyone, would see our distress signal. The bright flare illuminated the night briefly, but there was no sign of help on the horizon. We were on our own, at the mercy of a creature that defied imagination. The boat creaked and groaned under the immense pressure, and I knew we couldn't hold out much longer. In a final act of desperation, I took a flare gun and fired it directly into one of the creature's enormous eyes. It let out a deafening, otherworldly shriek, and its tentacles loosened their grip on our boat. Seizing the opportunity, I gunned the engine, and the siren's call shot forward, escaping the creature's clutches. We didn't stop until we were miles away from that horrifying encounter. Panting and shaken, we huddled together, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The moon had disappeared behind thick clouds, and the night had turned pitch black, as if the very ocean had swallowed up our tormentor. For hours we navigated the treacherous waters, unsure of what other terrors lurked beneath the surface. As the first light of dawn broke on the horizon, we finally dared to breathe a sigh of relief. We had survived the night, but the memory of that unknown monster would haunt our dreams for the rest of our lives. We reported the incident to the authorities when we returned to port, but our story was met with skepticism and disbelief. They searched the waters, but found no trace of the creature we described. They dismissed it as a figment of our imaginations, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. But I know the truth. I saw the terror that lurks in the depths of the ocean, a nightmare that defies explanation. And as I stand on the shore, watching the waves roll in, I can't help but wonder what other horrors lie hidden in the vast, unknowable expanse of the open sea. Whispers from the Abyss, the Madness of Harbour's End. The coastal town of Harbour's End was a quiet, picturesque place where life revolved around the rhythms of the ocean. I, Sarah, was born and raised here, and like the rest of the tight-knit community, I was used to the ebb and flow of daily life. But that all changed when the storm blew in one fateful evening, bringing with it a small fishing boat and a man who would forever shatter our peace. It was a dark and stormy night, when the pounding rain and howling winds heralded the arrival of the battered vessel. The townsfolk, always eager to lend a helping hand, gathered on the dock as the boat limped into the harbour. We watched in awe as it drew closer, its paint peeling and its sails in tatters. As the boat finally docked, a solitary figure emerged from the shadows. He stumbled onto the pier, drenched and dishevelled, his eyes wide with terror. It was clear that he had endured a harrowing ordeal out at sea. The man's name was Henry, and he was a seasoned fisherman, well known and respected in the community. But the man who stood before us was a mere shadow of his former self. His once strong frame was now emaciated, and his hands shook uncontrollably. We rushed him to the local inn, wrapping him in warm blankets and offering him a hot meal. It was hours before he could speak coherently, and when he finally did, the tale he told sent shivers down our spines. Henry spoke of a fishing expedition gone terribly wrong. He had set out with his crew, expecting a routine trip, but they had stumbled upon something unimaginable. A colossal, otherworldly creature had surfaced from the depths, a grotesque monstrosity with tentacles that seemed to stretch on forever. It was a creature that defied all reason, a horror that should not exist in our world. The crew had tried to flee, but the creature had pursued them relentlessly. It seemed to be driven by a malevolent intelligence, as if it were toying with them. It would disappear beneath the waves, only to reappear suddenly, each time closer and more menacing. The relentless pursuit had driven the crew to madness, and one by one they succumbed to fear and despair. Henry was the sole survivor, but he was a broken man. He claimed that the creature had whispered to him in a language he couldn't understand, filling his mind with incomprehensible visions and nightmares. He was convinced that the creature was not of this world, that it had come from someplace far beyond the reaches of human understanding. As Henry recounted his tale, a sense of dread settled over the room. We exchanged worried glances, wondering if this man had truly witnessed the unimaginable or if the horrors of the sea had simply driven him mad. In the days that followed, the town was gripped by a growing unease. People began to whisper about the strange happenings that had plagued Harbour's End since Henry's arrival. Fishermen reported eerie sightings in the waters, strange, tentacle-like shapes that defied explanation. Others claimed to have heard the whispers of a sinister, otherworldly presence on the wind. As the weeks turned into months, the town descended into madness. Sleepless nights were filled with nightmares, and people became increasingly paranoid, fearing that the creature from Henry's story was lurking just beyond the shoreline. The once thriving fishing industry came to a standstill as fear gripped the town. And then, one fateful night, Henry disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a note that read, "It's coming for me." The town's search efforts were in vain, and we were left to wonder whether Henry had met his end at the hands of the same horror that had haunted his nightmares. Harbour's End was forever changed by that stormy night and the arrival of the madman with his tale of a monstrous, otherworldly creature. The town's once peaceful existence had been shattered, replaced by a constant fear that the sea itself held secrets beyond human comprehension. To this day, I stand on the shore, gazing out at the tumultuous waters, wondering if Henry's story was a warning, a glimpse into the abyss that lies hidden beneath the surface of the ocean. And as the whispers on the wind grow louder, I can't help but fear that the horror that claimed him is still out there, lurking in the depths, waiting to strike again.